A V's at £300, Emily was told she'd never see 40. She proved them wrong. Chapter 1. The fluorescent lights of Lakeside Medical Center buzzed overhead as Emily Matthews clutched the thin paper gown around her body. At 38, she'd mastered the art of making herself small despite her 300-pound frame. Eyes down, shoulders hunched, taking up as little emotional space as possible, even when her physical presence couldn't be diminished. "Your blood pressure is dangerously high. Triglycerides off the charts," Dr. Reynolds said, without looking up from her chart. His clinical tone matched the sterile room. Pre-diabetic, sleep apnea, joint deterioration. Emily nodded mechanically. None of this was news. "Ms. Matthews, I don't typically speak this bluntly, but at this rate, you won't see 40. The words hung in the air like a sentence. Emily felt her chest tighten, her breath shallow. She'd heard versions of this warning before, from her mother's disappointed sighs to her ex-husband's parting cruelty, but never so final, so medical. "I need you to understand the severity," Dr. Reynolds continued, finally looking up. His expression softened unexpectedly. "This isn't about aesthetics. It's about your life." Outside, Boston's crisp autumn air hit Emily's face as she exited the medical building. She'd lived in this corner of New England her entire life, watched 38 seasons change from behind various barriers, classroom windows, car windshields, and most recently, the large bay window of Addison Public Library, where she'd worked as head librarian for nearly a decade. The walk back to her car winded her more than usual, her mind replaying the doctor's words. The prognosis shouldn't have shocked her. She'd felt her body's slow rebellion for years, the breathlessness climbing stairs, the pain in her knees, the crushing fatigue. But hearing it stated so plainly, a deadline on her existence, crystallized everything. At the library that afternoon, Emily moved through her routine like a ghost. She shelved returned books, her fingers lingering on the worn spine of Jane Eyre, her favorite since college. The familiar weight of the book offered momentary comfort. "Ms. Matthews?" A voice broke through her reverie. "Do you have any recommendations similar to this one?" A teenager held up a dog-eared copy of Pride and Prejudice. Emily managed a smile. Several, actually. This was where she felt most herself, surrounded by stories, sharing literary treasures with the quiet souls who frequented the library. Here, her size seemed irrelevant, her knowledge and passion taking center stage instead. That evening, Emily's small craftsman house welcomed her with familiar silence. She'd bought it after her divorce 7 years ago, cherishing its solitude after years of Mark's cutting remarks about her appearance. The home was meticulously organized, a place for everything in its place, except for the kitchen. Emily opened her refrigerator, staring at the carefully arranged comfort foods that had become both solace and prison. The routine was well established. Takeout containers from Rosie's Diner, grocery store cake, microwavable meals, food that didn't judge, didn't leave, didn't tell her she was killing herself. She reached for a container of macaroni and cheese, then stopped, Dr. Reynolds' words echoing. "You won't see 40. Emily closed the refrigerator door without taking anything. Instead, she walked to her bedroom and pulled a dusty photo album from the bottom drawer of her nightstand. Inside was a photo of herself at 22, still heavy but vibrant, standing on Revere Beach with her younger sister Abby, both laughing as waves crashed around their knees. That Emily had dreams beyond survival, that Emily believed she deserved more. Outside her window, the maple tree that had stood sentinel through her life's quiet tragedies was beginning to turn golden at the edges. Another season changing. Emily touched the glass, feeling the cool October evening through the pane. 40, she whispered to her reflection, barely visible in the darkening window. It was less than 2 years away, a ticking clock she could no longer ignore. For the first time in years, Emily felt something stir beyond the numbness and resignation. Not determination yet, that would come later, but a question forming in the back of her mind. What if? What if she could be more than the cautionary tale, the tragic librarian, the woman who'd given up? What if Dr. Reynolds was wrong? Emily turned from the window and opened her laptop. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, trembling slightly before she typed, "How to start living again at £300. The search results populated her screen, a digital breadcrumb trail leading toward a future she'd stopped imagining possible. Emily took a deep breath and clicked the first link. Chapter 2. The first light of dawn crept through Emily's bedroom curtains, illuminating dust particles dancing in the air. For once, she was already awake. Sleep had evaded her after yesterday's medical verdict, her mind churning with possibilities and fears in equal measure. "One step at a time," she murmured, repeating the mantra from the health forum she'd stayed up reading. Slipping into the only pair of sneakers she owned, pristine white Nikes, purchased years ago during a short-lived New Year's resolution, Emily stepped onto her front porch. The November air bit at her cheeks as she surveyed her quiet street. Maple trees lined the sidewalk, their leaves a tapestry of amber and crimson. A few houses down, Mr. Finnegan walked his golden retriever, a morning ritual Emily had observed from behind her curtains for years. Taking a deep breath, she descended her porch steps and began walking, just to the corner and back, she promised herself. 20 minutes later, she returned home, face flushed and lungs burning, but with something unfamiliar flickering in her chest. A small victory. At work that day, Emily found herself in the library's neglected health section, pulling books on nutrition and sustainable lifestyle changes. As she flipped through pages during her lunch break, she ignored the skeptical glances from her co-worker, Denise. "Another diet?" Denise asked, unwrapping her sandwich at the break-room table. "Didn't you try that juice cleanse last year?" Emily closed the book she was reading. "This is different," she said quietly, surprising herself with the conviction in her voice. That evening, Emily stood in her kitchen, surveying the contents of her refrigerator with new eyes. The takeout containers and frozen meals that had been her staples now looked like artifacts from another life. With methodical precision, she began emptying shelves, filling garbage bags with processed foods and sugar-laden comfort staples. The phone rang as she finished. Seeing her sister's name on the caller ID, Emily hesitated before answering. "Hey, Abby," she said, trying to sound casual. Their relationship had grown strained over the years, their weekly calls reduced to monthly obligations. "Just checking in," Abby replied, her voice carrying the familiar undercurrent of concern that Emily had come to resent. "How are you?" Emily considered giving her standard response, "Fine, busy with work," but instead found herself saying, "I went to the doctor yesterday. It wasn't good." The silence on the other end lasted only seconds, but felt longer. "What did they say?" Abby finally asked, her voice softer. "That I'm killing myself," Emily replied, the bluntness surprising them both. "That I won't make it to 40 if something doesn't change." Another pause. I'm so sorry." "What can I do?" The question hung between them. For years, Abby had offered help, gym memberships, diet books, even offering to pay for a nutritionist, all declined by Emily with increasing defensiveness. "Maybe," Emily hesitated, swallowing her pride. "Maybe you could come grocery shopping with me this weekend. I don't really know where to start." The relief in Abby's voice was palpable. "Saturday morning. I'll pick you up at 9. After hanging up, Emily sat at her kitchen table, now bare except for a notepad where she'd written Week 1 at the top. The emptiness around her was terrifying. She'd dismantled her coping mechanism without having a replacement. Her phone buzzed with a text from Abby. "Proud of you for taking this step. Love you, Em." Emily stared at those words, her vision blurring with unexpected tears. When was the last time someone had been proud of her? When was the last time she'd been proud of herself? The following morning, Emily returned to the sidewalk, this time venturing a little further. Her body protested, knees aching, back stiff, but she pushed forward. At the end of her street was a small park she hadn't visited in years. A few early morning joggers passed her, and Emily braced herself for judgmental stares, but most just nodded in greeting. One woman, grey-haired and lithe, slowed beside her. "Beautiful morning, isn't it?" Emily nodded, too winded to speak. "I'm Margaret. See you round?" The woman smiled before continuing her run. "Emily," she managed to call after her. "And yes, maybe you will." By Saturday, Emily had walked 5 mornings in a row. The distance remained modest, but each day brought slightly less pain, slightly more breath. When Abby arrived for their shopping trip, she did a double take at Emily's appearance, still 300 pounds, but standing straighter, a hint of colour in her cheeks. At Whole Foods, Emily felt immediately out of place among the fitness enthusiasts and young professionals with their carefully curated shopping baskets. "I don't belong here," she whispered to Abby. Abby squeezed her hand. "Bullshit. You belong anywhere you choose to be." They filled the cart methodically. Vegetables Emily hadn't eaten in years, lean proteins, whole grains. No miracle foods, no extreme restrictions, just real ingredients for sustainable changes. At the checkout, the total made Emily wince. "This is twice what I usually spend." "Hospital bills are more expensive," Abby replied, then softened. "Let me help with groceries for a while. Consider it an investment in having my sister around for another 40 years. That night, Emily cooked a real meal for the first time in months, baked salmon with roasted vegetables. It wasn't perfect. The fish was slightly overdone, the broccoli too soft. But as she took the first bite, she realized something profound. Food could be fuel rather than escape. This meal was an act of self-care rather than self-destruction. Her phone chimed with a calendar notification she'd set up that morning. Day 5. Emily stared at it, understanding the weight of those small words. 5 days wasn't much in a lifetime, but it was 5 more than she'd had before. Outside, the November wind rattled her windows as the maple leaves fell, a reminder that everything, eventually, changes. Chapter 3. By mid-December, Emily's body had become a battleground of competing sensations. Her muscles ached from the daily walks that had gradually extended to encompass the entire neighborhood. Her knees, while still protesting, now allowed her to stand for longer periods without sharp pain. The scale, which she limited herself to checking weekly, showed a modest 15-pound loss, a drop in the ocean of what doctors said she needed to lose, but enough to loosen her work clothes slightly. The most significant changes, however, weren't physical. Emily had begun keeping a journal, tracking not just food and exercise, but emotions, a suggestion from the therapist she'd started seeing after her medical wake-up call. "I ate because I was lonely," she wrote one evening. "I ate because I was invisible, even when people were looking right at me. I ate because food didn't care that I was fat." These revelations came in painful bursts, often leaving her tearful but somehow lighter. Dr. Winters, her therapist, helped her connect dots between her father's abandonment when she was 12, her mother's subsequent obsession with appearances, and Emily's relationship with her body. "Food became safety," Dr. Winters observed during their 3rd session. "Now you're dismantling your shelter without having built a new one. No wonder it feels terrifying." The holiday season amplified these challenges. The library hosted its annual Christmas party, a potluck affair that had always been Emily's excuse for baking 3 different desserts, most of which she would take home and consume alone over the following days. This year, she brought a vegetable tray that earned a raised eyebrow from Denise. "Trying something different," Emily explained, not elaborating further. Later, as staff exchanged Secret Santa gifts, the library director handed Emily a small package. "From your secret admirer," he joked. Inside was a bookmark with a Jane Austen quote, "There is no charm equal to tenderness of heart." The gift was from Margaret, the runner from the park, who had become a morning constant in Emily's new routine. They rarely spoke beyond brief greetings, but there was solidarity in their parallel journeys through the cold New England mornings. Emily felt tears prick her eyes at the thoughtfulness. Small kindnesses like this had begun appearing in her life, as if the universe were acknowledging her efforts. The Saturday before Christmas, Abby invited Emily to help decorate her home for a holiday gathering. In previous years, Emily had declined such invitations, dreading the social anxiety and inevitable comparisons to her more socially successful sister. This time, she said yes. Abby's husband, Jeff, greeted her with genuine warmth. "The walking routine is working for you," he observed. "You look different, more present." Emily helped hang ornaments and string lights, surprised by how much energy she had. When Abby's friends arrived that evening, the old panic rose in Emily's throat, but she stayed, participating in conversations about books and local politics, subjects where she felt confident. "Emily, you should join our book club," suggested Abby's friend Claire. "We meet at Fireside Cafe monthly. January's book is Middlemarch, right up your alley." "Maybe I will," Emily replied, the possibility opening before her like a door to a room she'd long kept locked. As Christmas approached, Boston received its first significant snowfall. The morning after, Emily stared out at the transformed landscape, considering skipping her walk. The sidewalks would be treacherous, the cold biting. It would be so easy to retreat. Instead, she layered up and stepped outside, moving carefully along the partially cleared paths. The world felt hushed, insulated by snow. At the park entrance, Margaret waited, dressed in a bright red winter jacket. "Wasn't sure you'd make it," she called. "Neither was I," Emily admitted. They walked together that morning, their pace slower but purposeful. Margaret, Emily learned, was 67 and had started running after a heart attack 5 years prior. "Doctors gave me the same speech they gave you," she said. "Decide to live or decide to die, but make the decision consciously." Ndill. On New Year's Eve, Emily declined the library staff party in favor of a quiet evening at home. She prepared a healthy but satisfying meal and poured herself a single glass of wine. As midnight approached, she opened the photo album again, looking at the younger version of herself with new compassion. "I'm sorry," she whispered to the photo. "I'm sorry I gave up on you." Her phone rang, Abby calling to wish her Happy New Year. "Any resolutions?" Abby asked. Emily thought about the arbitrary promises she'd made and broken every January 1st for decades. "Just one," she replied, "to keep going." At midnight, Emily stood on her porch, watching fireworks bloom over distant Boston. The temperature had dropped below freezing, her breath forming clouds in the air. The Emily of last year would never have stood outside in the cold, exposed and uncomfortable, to witness this beauty. Her phone buzzed with a text from Dr. Reynolds' office, quarterly checkup reminder, January 15th, 10 a.m. Emily took a deep breath of the sharp winter air. 6 weeks into her journey, she was still clinically obese, still pre-diabetic, still at risk. But for the first time in decades, she was moving towards something rather than away from it. As the final fireworks faded, Emily made a silent promise to the night. When she turned 40 in September, she would be alive to celebrate it. Chapter 4. The August heat shimmered above the pavement as Emily completed her third lap around the park track. At 210 pounds, down 90 from her starting point last November, her body moved with a fluidity that still surprised her. Sweat plastered her t-shirt to her back, but she pushed through the discomfort, Margaret keeping pace beside her. 2 more minutes, Margaret encouraged, checking her watch. Then we cool down. Emily nodded, too focused on her breathing to respond. These interval training sessions had replaced their morning walks 3 months ago, another evolution in her transformed routine. Later, stretching on a bench beneath a maple tree, now lush with summer foliage, Emily marveled at the journey that had brought her here. Dr. Reynolds had been cautiously optimistic at her July checkup, noting significant improvements in her blood pressure and blood sugar levels. "You're rewriting your story," he'd said, reviewing her chart. "Not out of the woods yet, but definitely on a new path." Emily's phone chimed with a calendar notification. Book club, 7 p.m. She smiled, remembering how terrified she'd been at her first meeting in January. Now, 7 months later, the monthly gatherings at Fireside Cafe had become a highlight, the members becoming genuine friends rather than just Abby's social circle. Still on for tomorrow? Margaret asked as they gathered their water bottles. Absolutely, Emily replied. Tomorrow they would attempt the 5-mile charity walk along the Charles River, a goal that would have seemed impossible 9 months ago. At home, Emily showered and dressed for work, selecting a navy blue dress she'd purchased the previous weekend. Size 16, the smallest she'd worn since college. Her wardrobe had undergone multiple transitions as her body changed, each new size a tangible marker of progress. The library had changed too, or perhaps it was Emily's place within it. No longer hiding behind the circulation desk, she now led community programs, a monthly lecture series on classic literature and a new walking book club that combined her passions for reading and movement. "Miss Matthews," called Jason, a regular teenage patron, as she entered. "I finished that Baldwin book you recommended. It was intense." Emily smiled, engaging him in conversation about the book's themes. These connections, genuine interactions based on shared interests rather than obligatory pleasantries, had multiplied as she'd become more present in her own life. During her lunch break, Emily called the event planner she'd hired for her upcoming 40th birthday celebration. The party, scheduled for mid-September, represented more than just another year. It was the milestone she'd been told she wouldn't reach. "We've confirmed 30 guests," the planner informed her, "and the waterfront venue is set." After work, Emily met Abby for dinner at a new farm-to-table restaurant downtown. Their relationship had deepened through Emily's transformation, weekly shopping trips evolving into genuine sisterhood after years of distance. "How's the dating app going?" Abby asked over their shared appetizer. Emily groaned. "Terrifying. I've messaged with a few people, but haven't worked up the courage for an actual date." "No rush," Abby reassured her. "You're getting to know yourself first. That's important." The truth was, Emily's relationship with her body remained complicated. While she celebrated its new capabilities and improving health, she still carried mental weight, stretch marks, loose skin, and the lingering fear that she remained the invisible woman she'd been at 300 pounds. Dr. Winters had helped her understand that healing her body had been the more straightforward part of the journey. Healing her mind would be lifelong work. The following day, Emily and Margaret joined hundreds of others at the charity walk starting line. Emily spotted several library patrons and waved, no longer trying to make herself invisible in crowds. "Nervous?" Margaret asked, as they pinned on their participant numbers. "A little," Emily admitted, "but good nervous." The 5 miles unfolded along the sparkling Charles River, Boston's skyline providing a stunning backdrop. Emily felt the familiar burn in her muscles, the quickening of her heartbeat, but also the profound satisfaction of a body working as intended. 3/4 through the route, fatigue hit hard. Emily slowed, doubting her ability to finish. Margaret matched her pace without comment, a steadying presence. "Remember November?" Margaret finally said. "When you couldn't walk to the end of your street?" Emily nodded, gathering strength from the reminder. They crossed the finish line together, exhausted but triumphant. Volunteers handed out medals and water bottles as participants celebrated. "Emily!" a voice called. She turned to see Claire from book club, also participating in the walk. "A bunch of us are getting lunch. Join us?" The old Emily would have declined, making excuses about being too tired or having other plans. The new Emily checked in with her body. Yes, tired, but also exhilarated, and said, "I'd love to." Over lunch, conversation flowed easily. Emily shared stories from the library, listened to others' experiences, and found herself laughing openly, another habit she'd rediscovered. When the check came, a man from the adjacent table approached their group. "Excuse me," he said, looking directly at Emily. "I couldn't help overhearing you talk about the classic literature lectures at Addison Library. I've been meaning to check those out." Emily felt her cheeks warm as she provided details about the next session. After he left, Claire raised an eyebrow meaningfully, making Emily laugh and shake her head. 2 weeks later, on the morning of her 40th birthday, Emily woke before her alarm. Sunlight filtered through curtains she'd replaced last month, the heavy blackout drapes exchanged for lighter, more welcoming fabric. Another small change reflecting her internal shift. She reached for her journal, a habit now as ingrained as brushing her teeth. On a fresh page she wrote, 40 years old today, a milestone I was told I wouldn't see. That evening, friends gathered at the waterfront venue, library colleagues, book club members, neighbors and family. Emily wore a dress that showed her arms, another personal victory. The party was everything she'd hoped. Laughter, meaningful conversations, and a sense of genuine celebration. As sunset painted the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, Emily stepped away from the crowd for a moment of reflection. Looking out over Boston Harbor, she thought about the Emily of last year. The woman trapped in a body she'd made into a prison, convinced she was unworthy of taking up space in the world. She wasn't fixed. Now, there were still difficult days, still moments of doubt and old habits that threatened to resurface. Her body, while healthier, bore the marks of her journey, physical reminders of both struggle and triumph. "There you are," Abby said, joining her at the railing. "Everything okay?" Emily turned to her sister, tears and smile competing for dominance. "I did it, Ab. I made it to 40. Abby hugged her fiercely, and many more to come. Later, as guests prepared to leave, Dr. Reynolds approached. He'd been surprised by the invitation, but had accepted, witnessing firsthand the results of Emily's determination. "Happy birthday," he said, handing her a small gift bag. Inside was a book, The Second Mountain, by David Brooks. "For the next phase," he explained. "The first mountain is survival. The second is meaning." Emily thanked him, understanding the sentiment. These 9 months had been about saving her life. The decades ahead would be about living it fully. As the last guests departed, Emily remained on the terrace, Boston's lights twinkling across the harbor. In her purse was the list she'd made that morning, not resolutions, but intentions for her 40s. Travel, write, love, give back, take risks. The doctor's words from last November, "You won't see 40, had lost their power. She had proven them wrong, not just by surviving, but by reclaiming her right to thrive. Emily took a deep breath of the September air, feeling its promise of change, of continuing seasons, of life extending before her, unmarked pages waiting to be filled.